On November 16th, 2001, Warner Brothers quite probably changed the course of entertainment history. I can still remember that cold day, just after my 8th birthday. Still remember the excitement I felt as I sat in the old cinema in my hometown and waited anxiously for my showing of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. Ever since that movie became one of the largest and most beloved franchises of all time, aside from maybe the MCU, other movie studios have tried to create their own versions, often with much less success. Earlier that same year, young reader book Artemis Fowl was released. It had many of the same elements that made Harry Potter successful at a surface level. It had a target demographic hero, it had magic and mythical beings, and if anything, I'd actually say it's better for the simple fact that Artemis is a much more interesting character than the prophesized child Harry is. It seemed like Disney had finally hit its child franchise jackpot for roughly the millionth time when they announced that they'd be releasing an Artemis Fowl movie. And then it got pushed back. Then it got pushed back again. And then it was released on Disney Plus. Now, I'm not saying that something being released on Disney Plus is a bad thing. I mean, just look at The Mandalorian or High School Musical, the musical series. But for a major release being relegated to streaming, it's pretty rough. And it's easy to see why Disney lost faith in the movie. From its suspect writing to less than stellar performances from the entire cast. This movie has nothing special about it. It's your average, run-of-the-mill, unremarkable, unrememberable, young adult fantasy movie. I got nothing left to say about it. Okay, one quick thing. Can anyone tell me a moment where Artemis had any effect on the story? Like, is it just me? Or could we have removed Artemis, had Butler and Holly be the main characters, and ended up with the exact same movie? Also, yes, I'm calling him Butler. That's his name in the books, and I do not respect this version of that character. But can anyone tell me what choices Artemis makes? I think that's the biggest issue this movie has. Artemis is the most passive protagonist I've seen in a while. The entire movie happens to him, not because of him. In the books, Artemis is an extremely hateable 12-year-old criminal mastermind who learned about the existence of fairies, found out how their magic works and the rules that they have to abide by. He staked out a hotspot where fairies would replenish their magic, kidnapped one knowing that it would force them to send the army, and outsmarted that army at every turn in order to take all of their gold. Artemis in the movie has Butler tell him about the fairies after Artemis Fowl Sr. found all of the information. He randomly stakes out a spot where it just so happens that a rogue elf cop shows up. He hopes and prays that they'll send in a dwarf to find her. And he has no contingencies if anything goes wrong. None of this has any planning go into it. It was done over the course of like a couple of days, I think. I mean, this movie is terrible with time frames. Like, can anyone tell me how long the Aculos was missing for? And trust me, I could make a whole video on the Aculos alone. But that's not what this is about. I think that Nando V Movies pretty much covered it in his video on the editing of this godforsaken movie. You know, in all fairness, not every movie needs an extremely active protagonist. For some reason, people love Spider-Man 2. And for 75% of that movie, it's happening to Peter, not because of him. But in the end, he makes the choice to go off, fight Doc Ock, save New York and Mary Jane, and becomes an active hero. Artemis never has that moment. He just keeps kind of coasting through, letting everyone hand him the information he needs, and deal with his problems, and accomplish his goals. Even his main goal of saving his father from Opal Cowboy was completed by Holly. Also, I'm just going to slide in that Opal Cowboy was a pale reflection of herself. In the books, she was the only being on the earth or under it who could compete intellectually with Artemis. She was a huge name in fairy business, and essentially was the less eccentric Justin Hammer of the Fowlverse. She was the dark reflection of what Artemis could be, and in fact what he was about to become. Even at his worst, Artemis was chaotic neutral. Opal was chaotic evil right from the word go. But not in this movie. No. In this movie, she got relegated to a shadow person whom I'm not convinced wasn't Samara from The Ring. Now, look, I'm not a Hollywood screenwriter. I haven't dedicated years of my life to learning the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts of writing. Maybe Connor McPherson and Hamish McColl had a good reason for taking one of the most active protagonists of all time and making him little more than an observer to Butler and Holly's adventure. Maybe Kenneth Branagh had a reason to reshoot the film and take Artemis from someone who was a criminal mastermind to someone who just says he is at the end without doing anything to prove it. I'm sure Josh Gad had a reason to do his best Batman impression throughout the whole movie. But what came out of their best intentions was an entirely forgettable movie that doesn't even provide us with any good memes. Artemis Fowl is a masterclass on how to fail your character. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. This is my first video, so I'm still working out the kinks a bit. But I really appreciate you sticking around till the end. I'm going to be releasing one of these every Monday from now on, talking about different movies and what I think they did really well or really, really poorly. If you did like the video, a like and subscribe is really appreciated, and let me know down in the comments what you thought about Artemis Fowl and its characterization of the different people. But that's it from me. Stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll catch you next week.